Pleasure's all mine. Thanks for getting this in the calendar. How's life? How's venture?
Life is cold in Berlin right now. Venture is great. Couldn't be happier. I think it's one of the great moments in venture. Everybody talks about AI. It's disrupting things from robotics to space tech. It's great.
You're celebrating 20 years at NGP, and
That's right.
I want
That's
to
right.
go back to the beginning and sort of understand a little bit about you and the firm.
Yeah. Pleasure. I mean, 20 years is a long time. So we didn't look the same 20 years ago as we look today. We really went with the flow, as you would say. We invested in B2C and amazing companies like Get Your Guide or Babel with our Fund 3 many years ago. Today, we're really B2B focused. We're investing in Series B companies with a 10 to $15 million check typically. And the funds were smaller back then. So really everything evolved. We have 1.6 billion under management, just to put the 20 years in perspective in dollars, and investing out of a $400 million fund right now. And but we're I think one of the most important things for me, also why I joined the firm, I wasn't here 20 years ago, um, was the global nature. We have always been a global firm with half of the team in Palo Alto, the rest of the team in between Europe and China. We're not investing in China actively anymore, but we are still very, very global. And this is really what I think makes my day way more interesting, operating with founders from all over the world.
Where did you first get into venture?
Yeah, that was totally by accident.
It
I
always
met
seems
met
I'm
some.
seeing a trend
It's
here. It's
always
always by
like.
accident. No one just gets into it. It's either I'm a founder, I have capital to deploy, or it's I was doing
Yeah.
something else and I fell into it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's is it about nobody knows about venture or nobody really wants to be in venture. I don't have the answer on that question, but for me it was by coincidence back in 2011. BMW was just creating this new brand, and as part of the brands, I really wanted to also be all the way out there and working with startups. And it was BMW I Ventures was called. It's still a very active, great firm today out of the Bay Area. And so I joined in New York end of the year. And always my funniest story, actually, when I got into venture, my first thing was I came to New York, and then the first thing is to turn around and fly to London. This was for those of you who have been in London in end of 2011. That is a time when Halo Taxi and Get Taxi were active, and my first job was to basically compare them and talk to a bunch of black cap drivers. Was very on the ground, very physical, and kind of software meets a physical world, which still I love to the day to day.
Did you make the investment?
No, we didn't. Luckily, I mean, both companies are not really around anymore. But it was just for a young guy just moving to New York, going back to London was a true jet setter life, and it was such a great learning curve for me back then.
Where did you pick up the chops of what you're great at in venture today? Where did you really
I think
learn the craft? Because I feel like
yeah,
some of this is artisan of you've
yeah,
got to stay in the game for a considerably long period of time. And that's why these high trust relationships exist for people that have been in the game 20 plus years. But
right.
also it's an element of like, we need to make big bets.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think the good thing about venture is you need to think contrarian to be good. And therefore, you could say that really learning the chops from somebody might put you in a mold that is actually not contrarian. And so learning it by observation and learning it by talking to founders is maybe the better way of learning it in the first place. At least for me, this is uh, telling myself at least that was the best way for me to learn it. Talking to a lot of founders, what they liked in the best investors they worked with, observing great investors on the boards where I was uh, lucky enough to be participating early on, and then the rest was just my, I guess, the way I'm thinking, bringing that into that new space and trying to make sense out of it. And the relationship piece of venture is really what drives me. Like you can build, as you said, great long-term relationships, and they will keep on giving. And you, if you give the ecosystem will give back. And it's just such a beautiful thing where we are in a very fast pace, but then we still have that very long-term view and relationships that are built over 2 or 3 companies that you sometimes back the same founder. That's just great. And it was also a moment where I made my first angel investment in 2013, just not too long ago, when I then went into venture. And it was that I don't only do it in my full-time job, but I'm also putting my own money where my mouth is and investing in great founders that I really admired for the businesses they go after.
Look, I don't want to get into the like what makes a good founder. I think it's evidently clear like today what
Right.
that is, right? But what I'd love to do is talk a little bit around like investment thesis for yourself and also some of the funding reports that you've been putting out, which is sort of why we're here today, right? I
Yeah.
found most interestingly, right, security and defense funding surged 312%. It's a $1.4 billion increase because of the geopolitical tensions. You mentioned earlier that obviously you've got to be contrarian in venture. How is that how is that being contrarian when it's sort of the thing that has to be done?
Yeah, so maybe to put the context on what you described here, this is our DACH report, so it's really just covering Germany and Austria and Switzerland, and we put them out every year for the last 3 years. And I'm based in Berlin, so naturally covering also the region. I think the defense sector. I would completely understand if you say actually this is not very contrarian because everybody is yelling defense and everybody runs towards defense and investors. There is this joke on the street where a lot of impact ESG investors are now defense investors, and it's a
Hey,
little
I
bit
was talking to
dark.
Mimi Billing, right? She
Um,
was like, they've all gone resilience, which is basically just the defense. I'm like, hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, so I think it's all fair and square, and you need to go where opportunities are, and you need to move quickly. That's what we tell our founders. So it should also be true in VC. As you said, the defense piece is just something that needs to happen. It's also, if we're really looking back into venture capital history in Silicon Valley, this is also how VC started. This is coming out of very large secret government programs and a lot of hardware involved, and then there was this phase, that clean tech burst of the bubble, really, where nobody wanted to touch hardware plus software anymore. And so then the new VC one-on-one was, don't charge hardware. Hardware is hard. We don't do that. And it's not VC backable. And now I think we're back to maybe square one, where VC started originally, and rightfully so. The time was very different back then, and the time is very different now than it was, unfortunately, 5 years ago. And hopefully it will be better soon again. But it's unlikely that the world will be the same as before. So and there's one thing that I really find intriguing is that, where is innovation coming from? Back in the days, it was coming from governments, kind of secret think tank type of things, and then ultimately we heard about it. Then I don't know, in our homes, new technologies. And now this really changed. I think we have seen drones were out, and now drones are being used everywhere. And there was a great article from Sifted on, are we having too many drone startups? And that's probably also true. But it's it's also great to have too much of something, because that creates that friction that will make companies acquire other companies. Company going down, this talent will do something else. And this is really the phase, I think, where actually the value will be created. We're in this gold digger early stage phase of that.
Okay. Why do you think Germany leads with the most amount of funding? It's 8.47 billion, up 22% year on year.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, UK is still bigger, but
But
we.
just from the report itself and the
Yeah,
work and the in
that's right.
just from the research that you've done.
Yeah. Look, I think there are a few interesting things that we found out in our report. One is Germany isn't just a one-hit wonder phenomenon. It's like growing every year, and it's steady, and it doesn't, like, it does those big jump up and down, which is good. So it's let's say more sustainable value that is being created, or that's the hope, at least based on the numbers. We have also, you're looking at UK, if we're looking at France or even Silicon Valley or the US for a very long time, you always had one large center. You have Paris, you
Hmm.
have London, you had Silicon Valley. In Germany, luckily right now, we already have at least two strong centers and then maybe some other centers that are in the creation. But
Berlin,
Munich and
Munich. What else?
exactly. And then you have the Rhineland, like the western part. You have the Stuttgart area. You have a lot of subs. Hamburg is great. They're like relatively small comparison to other cities, but then still there are ecosystems being built. And then around the Heilbronn, with we have this large Schwarz group that is putting a lot of money into AI, and a lot of players everywhere that want to bring tech forward, which is great. Similar in Switzerland, you Switzerland is also covered in our report, and this is really this uh, um, uh, great phenomenon that you have this small country punching way over the weight line.
Hmm.
You have only really Zurich, the Lausanne, Geneva area, and St. Gallen and Basel, maybe if you're into biotech, and you have those four areas. But with that, you're per capita, you're way above Germany, you're way above anybody in Europe, really. And that's driven by great universities. So why does Austria, with similar, well, not too far away population, doesn't have the same venture capital? In my view, it's the great companies. You have the Googles and so on of the world in Zurich, and you have the great universities, the ETHs of the world. Um, and that really brings it to a new caliber. And so I'm most excited actually about the future of Zurich, because in Germany you could have seen it already. Berlin was on the map for a long time. Munich was a great university ecosystem and a lot of industrial, let's say, foundational infrastructure there was going to happen. But that Switzerland is developing the way it is, it's the most positive trend for me personally. And yeah, and you mentioned defense already. I think there was also a great finding in the report that we're really going from this AI, generic foundational AI, into very vertically integrated. So using AI to fix a very specific problem and providing value to their customers. That's the right trend that needs to happen as well.
I want to spend a little bit of time on AI for a moment with you.
Mhm.
There is We're in the narrative right now that there is a bubble, etc., because of the insane valuations, because of the insane funding rounds, and it feels that
Yeah.
if you look back in the history of venture and the back in the history of technology, there have just been bubbles along the way, and it's been who has been able to steer the ship through them, right? In your head, how are you thinking about where we are with AI today? We're obviously in the era of the agent, with the era of reasoning, especially
Yeah.
2025, but it's moved at a rapid pace from 3 years ago. How do you have a mental model on how this technology is going to change the way that one you invest, but also the investments that you've made?
Yeah.
It's a
It's
broad
a
question, I know. It's
it's a
it's like
very big,
it's
broad
like what's
question,
the
but
what's the answer to, what's the reason for existing 42?
yeah, no, I think maybe on where are we in AI to start with. I think we are in that weird phase where we're moving extremely fast, as you said, but we are also still in the beginning, despite the fact that we invested so much money already in
Hmm.
infrastructure and so on. So that's just very hard for most people to comprehend, to say, hey, but we're moved so fast. I heard AI already 10 years ago. How can we be still in the beginning? And because I was part of that industry for a long time, this self-driving car example is always an easy one to illustrate, where in 2014, 15, everybody said 17, 18, we will have only autonomous cars on the street. I'm exaggerating, but that's obviously didn't happen. It's a very hard
It's a
problem.
hard problem.
It's a super hard problem, and
Can I
but
just
we
put? Can
need
I touch on
this.
that for a moment?
Yeah, yeah, please, yeah,
Is
of
the
course.
problem hard, or is it the human element that's difficult? It's in that there will be a transition phase where humans may get hurt during the process of rolling these things out, and our safety regulations are holding back the innovation that could be made in self-driving.
Yeah, it's another huge topic. um, you have human is a huge element, and it's not only the topics that you mentioned, which I fully subscribe to, but it's also that mixed model of you will have a time when you have autonomous cars and then also people-driven cars at the same time, and then when you mix modes, it becomes very messy. So that's another element that is being often overlooked. But look, we have a lot of the hardware already figured out, but there is still the brain piece that stuff that is also, by the way, holding back humanoid. Not to not to add another huge topic here, but um, the brain part of reasoning and doing reasoning in a very very fast way for new situations, like with standard situations. This is really the tough part for all automatic machines, including self-driving, but also humanoids and other robotic. That brain part is still far away, and that's why also we talk a lot about chips and data centers. How do we upgrade technology and how we get it cheaper? But this is really where we need to still stretch a bit. I think on the sensor side, like the eyes and ears, we're pretty good already. We can always be better, especially dark and foggy, and those situations are still maybe limiting, but I think we're good. Also on the cost, like the cost curve on the sensors came down dramatically. Um, but that it's a huge thing because especially if you ask 100 people on the street, would they feel comfortable driving in Silicon Valley when they grew up in London or Berlin? Would they feel comfortable driving in Paris? And many people would not feel comfortable doing that. And why would we expect that from a machine? That's one other element that we should think about. And I think the point that you brought up, there will be mistakes made, and then we will always look at zero tolerance, even though there is an established uh, fault baseline with how many people get hurt in traffic accidents today. And we are better with autonomous driving, like across the board. But it's still a different standard. And that's normal because it's new. Like there are those old articles on electricity coming out. Oh, our children will all like go, I don't know, crazy because of electricity now. And it's always a bit of a reaction. I'm not saying we're still at this phase, but there's
But it's
sometimes that
a it's a fair
human
point,
reaction.
right? Because with
No.
AI, are you? I don't know about you, but the way that I look at it is very
Mm.
much it is the oil of today. And so when you're
Yeah.
building technology, if you're not building one with AI or for AI or with the application of this technology, you are being left behind.
I would counter that a little bit. I would say the oil is actually electricity today, because the limitation factor and who can be great in AI is much more limited or connected to how electricity is available and what the cost of electricity is. And then the AI maybe is more than the car. Is it like a good engine or a bad engine? And then we can drive faster, slower, more premium, and maybe off-road, not off-road. So we have different elements of AI out there that have their own style. And I think to your AI question also, that is ultimately where we are right now, that we put the infrastructure in place where we have not figured out electricity. Really, how do we bring electricity to all the infrastructure that is built? It just doesn't comprehend the timings behind it. What are we doing with all this infrastructure? It really assumes that AI can get to the ultimate benefit where it's like smarter than a human essentially. Um, and can do things as a human. But for that, I think for me personally, having lived through that self-driving car experience, we are way further away from that. But we need to be optimistic in the now and here, and we always need to think it's happening tomorrow to really continuing investing in it. But I think it's more of a 2040 thing rather than a 2025.
Are you are you bullish on the future? Are you an optimist on technology?
Yeah, I hope every VC is an optimist. Every founder is an optimist. It's always, if you would know how hard it is, most founders wouldn't have done it. So they must be optimists. But yeah,
Ha-
I'm a hopeless optimist.
I guess what I then have to ask is very much, what are you pessimistic about?
I'm pessimistic about, I mean, right now, what we talked about in the beginning on the defense piece, I like to see how technology can solve problems and protect people, and that's a great piece. But this is clearly we don't want people being killed, and we don't want the reason for why we are now building that technology, even though it will bring technology forward, but there's a cost, a human cost to that. So that's
Hmm.
a piece I'm pessimistic about, and I hope we get through that quickly. The other pessimistic thing is it's just that technology fatigue. We have such a huge complexity right now, and the understanding or the level of understanding of somebody like you and me, and then somebody from the street that has nothing to do with our industry. I think this gap is widening, and that is dangerous because the society needs to be closely aligned on where technology can bring us. And that is linked to the increasing complexity. Like explaining a grandma AI is much harder than explaining maybe even a self-driving car. That's more physical, but just some software doing some magic things. It's clearly we know we have this slogan actually at NGP. This we unleash the magic of technology. It's a little bit to that old saying that it's magic until it's explained, and it's kind of the technology behind is magic at any point, depending on your explainability of it. Anyhow, that's those would be the 2 points.
I was talking to Jeff Crucy from it's Black Lake. He runs a bunch of other stuff as well, and his main point that he was worried and scared about was like, what happens after Ukraine ends. I pose
Yeah.
that question to you, like, what do you see there? What are you worried about post Ukraine? Is as the war ends, which thankfully it will, and we might enter into a period of truce and peace, however long that lasts. What happens to these companies like Helsing and these overfunded, potentially overfunded companies? Do they go into dual use? Do they do something
Um,
else? Do they have to reevaluate what their technology and what their hardware does?
I mean, look, I think it's a complex question for 2 reasons. One, if we're looking at the existing primes, look at Thales, Leonardo, Rheinmetall, and so on, they didn't disappear after whatever original reason when they were created. I think they diversified technology into other areas, but they also became prime. So they were um, so system critical that they wouldn't go away because you still buy that technology. And so I think what I'm hopeful for is that we really reshape that old dusty European industrial backbone on that defense and military piece, that we find a new, more modern way of doing that. And then this is a new reality. It will not go away because it's now part of the future and how we operate. Anyway, even with Ukraine, hopefully being at peace, and is is that we now established a baseline again, which will carry on in terms of defense spending and so on for a few years. And so I don't see material differences for many companies, not for all, over the next 5 to 10 years. And then those that are just saying, I have a better drone, and there are 20 others that also have a better drone, yes, they will suffer. But that's to my original point. I think that talent infusion will create great companies that we cannot even imagine, that will automate our factories, that will make better energy, because you experience so many different disciplines in those companies, that this will be a new hopefully infusion of talent into the future of Europe as well, that is independent of defense and that specific application they lived in. And so housing, I think, will be a new prime, and will be part of
And so we
Europe,
have a
and
changing of the
hopefully,
guard.
yeah, exactly. And will just be a new lay of the land.
Do you think
So I'm not worried about that.
one of the first people I've heard that isn't worried, right? Which is always a great sign to see. So what you're saying is,
I'm
well,
also not invested in one of those.
which is actually quite nice, right? You don't have to plug the portcos.
Yeah.
Look, what I was going to say was we sort of come to this place where the like modularity of being able to like drag and drop a prime in feels like it's getting faster and faster and faster as we speed up what it means to get through like just regulation for building these types of hardware and software. And so we might live in a future in 5, 7, 8, 10 years time where there isn't just one or two or three primes, isn't an oligopoly, but actually there's like 15 different ones that you can just drag and drop in that can do all the same capabilities. Do you see that future?
Less so. I think the part of the future that you described here with a drag and drop, definitely. See great startup coming out right now in stealth mode that exactly that pitch to say, I'm just the best in understanding technology better than the primes, and I'm the best to bring those technologies together to bring to market whatever new technology is needed at any given point, at the future new drone, whatever. I think that is inherently the DNA that the new primes will have and that the old primes don't have. And also the reason why they have a right for existence. And I think what I expect is that some divisions of those old primes will be acquired by the so-called new primes, and it will be then the, let's say, the seal on this new future. And I don't think 15 primes make sense. It just always in technology will always drive down to 2, 3, 4. Maybe if we're very broad and defining it broader, then maybe 5, 6. But there are efficiency reasons why it will always come down, and then it will breathe out again in a new field, and it will come down again. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, as they say, and I would expect the same here.
Look, before we let you go and obviously get back to investing in Europe and some of these incredible companies that you're invested in, because I want some of those portcos on the show. One of the things I love to ask investors is, well, there's two actually. One, who are the two companies that aren't inside your portfolio companies that you're invested in, valued under $250 million, that you believe are going to be generational defining companies?
Under $250 million. That's a good one. Not in our portfolio. Okay. I'm not sure if I have those two companies in my head right now, but I would maybe give it more of a directional thing. Companies like Deltia in Berlin or Syrian in Switzerland, they help to how factories operate much better. So it's really the back office of that. This category, I think, will be a new category winning company or build one in the future. Whether that's Delta or Syrian or somebody else, I don't know. But this is a really overlooked and hard to understand space that requires and deserves more attention. And then I think the others that I had in mind were already over 250 million, so that goes to inflated valuations. But we'll get back to you in another show, maybe.
Sounds good. Last question then. I ask founders this question, and sort of I'm going to pose it to you, but with a little bit of a different spin. I asked them on who's on their Mount Rushmore of founders. For you, who's on your Mount Rushmore of venture capitalists, of investors?
Um, I really like the guys from Plural VC. Khaled, he's an amazing guy, really coming from that founder mentality, hard charging, cut out all the stuff that is distracting for the CEO. It's really more of a maybe Silicon Valley style to investing in Europe, which really this is where I have 80% of my experience in the past. Um, and this is why I think we need more in Europe. We need more Khaleds in Europe, and Plural is definitely a great one for that, and specifically Khaled.
Awesome. Christian, this has been a pleasure. I hope we get to do it again. I enjoy talking defense any time of the week.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine. See you soon.